I'm Mrs. Miller, your teacher at ELA Academy. Welcome to Part 1 of Essay Basics. Today, we'll talk briefly about the modes of writing. It isn't a difficult concept, but I'll refer to the modes in future lessons, so I want to cover it now to avoid confusion. Some students struggle with the word mode, so I'll give you a way to remember what it means. A writing mode is a method of communication. You can remember this definition because mode and method each have an M and a D. When you sit down to write an essay, you have a point to communicate to your audience. What mode or method will you use to communicate that point? There are 4 modes of discourse that you might use. You can remember them with the acronym EDNA. I got this from the Purdue Online Writing Lab website, which you can access with the QR code below. The E in EDNA stands for the expository mode. This is where you are simply explaining your idea. Expository and explain start with the same 2 letters. The other modes are more self-explanatory: descriptive, narrative, and argumentative. Let's say that I want to write about cell phones. If I used the expository mode, I might write about the history of cell phones and how they've changed over time. If I used the descriptive mode, I might describe one or more cell phones, their appearance and features. If I used the narrative mode, I might tell a story about how a cell phone saved somebody's life one day. If I used the argumentative mode, I might argue that Windows phones are better than iPhone or Android. But why am I talking about writing modes instead of essay types? You certainly might have an entire essay written in a single mode, like a whole expository essay or a whole descriptive essay. But it's also possible to include more than one mode in a single essay. Some modes are frequently used together. For example, you might write an expository essay and in the body you tell an anecdote, a brief story to illustrate a point. That anecdote is in the narrative mode, but the overall essay is expository. Likewise, you might have a narrative essay that dips into the descriptive mode. So you might be telling a story about the time you got into a car accident, and you spend one paragraph describing what the accident scene looked like. There are all sorts of ways in which you can combine the modes in order to make a more interesting essay. In fact, it's even possible to have an essay that makes use of all 4 modes. Let's say you're writing an essay about the movie Shrek. You plan to analyze the symbol of the onion. Remember, ogres are like onions, they have layers. Your overall essay is an argument because you are arguing in favor of your interpretation of the symbol. But in the course of making your argument, you might summarize part of the movie. That's narrative. Then you might describe the odor and appearance of an onion. That's descriptive. You might even do a little research on what an onion often symbolizes. Explaining what you discovered in your research would be expository. But again, the dominant mode of your essay is still argumentative. Be careful though, you might want to ask your teacher or professor if they're okay with you using more than one mode in your essay. I don't want you to get a bad grade because you wanted to be adventurous with your modes. In freshman composition in college, for example, your professor might want you to stick with one mode per essay so that he or she can assess whether you have mastered that mode. That's it for Essay Basics Part 1. I hope this lesson has helped you to understand the 4 different modes of discourse and how they might work together in an essay. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified when I post the next installment of Essay Basics. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And as always, you can find supplementary materials for each and every video on my blog at elaacademy.us. This is ELA Academy.